Welcome back to the Strength and Speed podcast. I'm your host, Strength and Speed owner and Conquer the Gauntlet Pro, Evan Preparis. I have another all Conquer the Gauntlet Pro team episode coming right at you. Let's jump right into it. So joining me, I have Jenny Overstreet. Jenny, say hi. Yeah.
Hi, guys.
So Jenny's a trainer at ROKC, or fitness director, I guess I should say, and basically wins everything that comes to Kansas City area. So any OCR or trail race type stuff, she comes and wins, and then it's been on a couple of Conquer the Gauntlet podiums this year. Also joining me, I have Miranda Huber. So Miranda, say hi.
Hello.
Miranda's got 10 OCR podiums in the elite category, and she's won a Savage, won a Terrain. I won a Conquer the Gauntlet. This year she won Conquer the Gauntlet and Continuum, Conquer the Gauntlet Continuum, the multi-lab option in the same race. She's brand new to the Conquer the Gauntlet Pro team. So yeah, welcome, Miranda.
Thanks.
Oh, and of course I forgot to mention the second place at the 3K at 2019 North American OCR Championships, 25 to 29 age group. Sorry, so it's a pretty big deal there, and was first behind another pro, Amy Pagic. All right, let's jump into today's episode because we're recording late, and by late I mean it's like 8:30 and getting close to my bedtime. So, and I keep bringing Jenny on the podcast, and I keep saying, all right, we're going to talk about Inside Tracker, and then at the very end of the episode, I completely forgot, and we blow through time. So we're going to start off. This episode is brought to you by Inside Tracker, and we're going to start off talking about them. And then we're going to talk about some of the races that have been going on in 2020 and how we've been dealing with a lull in OCR this year and some of Conquer the Gauntlet's new obstacles and stuff like that. So let's start off. Jenny, tell me about Inside Tracker and kind of your experience with them.
Okay. I'll go through kind of the whole process of what I went through.
Also what it is, because some people may be confused.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So Inside Tracker is a company that essentially does an analysis on your blood work and gives you feedback on from an athletic point of view, things you can improve on or areas that you might be lacking, or mainly nutritional type needs. So it's a super simple process. I was able to just fill out some information online. They sent me a list of different labs that I could go to around the city to get my blood drawn, and did that. And then they had to send it off to Inside Tracker, who did their analysis, and then just sent me a full email showing all of my blood work that they had gone through. And it was really simple. They sent it back. The analysis that you get is really easy to read and understand. And it even goes into different, mainly nutritional tips that different things you can add into your diet to improve anything that you're lacking. Talks about stress and sleep and inflammation and different things like that. So it was super cool. Maybe even 2 weeks at most, the whole process from start to finish. And actually even, I think the lab that I went to had to mail it, and some of them can even just do the work there and then send them the results. So it can be even faster than that. So it's a very cool product for sure.
Yeah, I was blown away by how easy it was to understand and read. And the cool thing is if you end up getting multiple tests, it'll on the graphs, it'll show where your last test was. So you don't have to go back and reference the other one. It shows them both on the same graph. So you're like, oh, I improved here, or I got worse here. And, or maybe the changes I'm making in my lifestyle are working.
Yeah, that's very cool. I've only done the one so far, so it will be nice to see. And I think it would also kind of be cool to see a difference between a race season one and an off season one, to see kind of how your body's responding to training modes and everything too. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think with, for Christmas and for birthdays and stuff like that, I feel like there's a point where I have too much stuff. I don't need any more stuff sometimes, it feels like. So I think this is a great option if you have an athlete in your life who, wants something that's athlete related, but that's not necessarily, more things to keep around the house or the apartment, whatever it may be. So I think it's a really good option. And I know there's multiple price points where, you can do all of your essentially Christmas shopping or possibly all of your shopping for the year for someone in one of their packages where you end up getting like multiple tests. So,
yeah, that's a great idea.
so what did you personally find out about yourself that, whether it be confirmation of things doing right or, identification of things doing wrong for your own training?
Yeah. So one of the main things that I had, which is a pretty common thing, especially with female athletes, is my ferritin level was a little bit low. So I did actually end up going to my doctor and just like discussing some things about that, and just decided to go ahead and start supplementing with some iron supplements to help with that. And then also, I don't know, I'm getting too geeking out on this a little bit too much, but getting into certain things that add into my diet to help my body absorb the ferritin level, or a little bit more, like vitamin C and things like that. So I mean, that's pretty huge from an athlete perspective as far as like energy and all that. So it was good to know and good for me to make some changes with. So that was the main thing.
Yeah, that's really good information. When I took my first one, it basically told me, I did it during race season. It was like, you're overtraining. And I'm like, I know I'm overtraining.
Yeah.
But it was cool to see it on paper, right? Because like, some days you wake up and I'm like, nah, I really don't feel like running. And it was cool to get like, it's not just me being weak and not wanting to run. It was like, oh, my body actually is showing me that I shouldn't be running right now. So that was, it was a nice confirmation, and reminds me to listen to my body, and, I can't just override my body at all times. So.
Yeah. Very cool.
Cool. So let's start getting into 2020, right? So 2020, there's been so many canceled races, and, I'm waiting to the end of the year to make a Facebook post about this, but as it stands now, if all the races that are on the schedule go, I think the brand that will have the most number of races, I believe, is Savage, and I think it's going to be 8 for the year. Then tied with 5, it will be Spartan Race. Also tied with them is Conquer the Gauntlet with 5. And then 4 races or 4 events would be Casey Timber Challenge, which is insane. This like local brand is going to be like one of the brands that held the most number of events in 2020. And then there's brands like that. Warrior Dash obviously is no longer in business. Tough Mudder held 0 events this year. I know Mark Ballas has held a couple of events, but we're talking OCR, and some of the events he's holding are wicked trail races. So they're like extreme trail races, or like a ruck, essentially a ruck race. So I know he's got a couple left for this year. So that's pretty wild that that's what the season's shaking out to be. I think if you showed me those numbers a year ago, even, I would be like, there's no way that is a good prediction, right? Like that is a terrible bet to take. But yeah, there it is.
And were all of Spartans prior to COVID, or have they had?
So they did 2. I think they did 1 or 2 after. I know they did Jacksonville. I think it might have done 1 more, but they weren't.
Okay.
I'm tracking the Jacksonville one wasn't competitive. Like they.
Oh,
it was
right.
It was like just the open heats, and you time yourself for fun essentially.
Yep. And no spectators and all that.
Right.
Yeah.
They have held other things, right? Like they have done, hurricane heats, which I wouldn't consider OCR, but there are a form of events. They have had that. They did that Spartan Games where they invited all those top tier athletes up to like Joe DeSenna's farm up in the Northeast and had him compete in a whole bunch of different exercises. So I'm looking forward to when that actually publishes. They're doing like a couple like mini episodes that'll be posted online about that, which should be really interesting. On a side note, I'm putting my money on Hunter McIntyre.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it's like strength and endurance, and I think he has a really good mix. And Ryan Atkins, I put him up there too, right? Like those are probably 1 and 2, and then I'd say the other OCR people, and then probably then some of the strength-based athletes towards the bottom, because a couple of the events were like 5 hours of trail running or like 6 hours of swimming. It's just like the football player is not going to do well there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
all right,
It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah. let's talk 2020 events. Start off with Conquer the Gauntlet. Miranda, take us through your experience with Conquer the Gauntlet, and I know they debuted a new obstacle this year, so we'll talk about that too.
So I've done 3 so far this year. I did the Oklahoma event, the Little Rock, Arkansas, and then just this past weekend was the Dallas, Texas. So this year has been a little bit different. For the last 2 events specifically, I heard they weren't allowed to dig any water pits underneath of obstacles. They weren't allowed, for insurance reasons, they couldn't have any like stagnant water. So there was no stairway to heaven at the last 2, which it felt different. And then also the cliffhanger, the monkey bar obstacle, was also not over water. So it was like the same length as it usually would be, except it wasn't as tall because they just had it over the ground. So it really made it easier because you didn't really have to get a big swing to go up to the next monkey bar. They were much like flatter. So it's just kind of a different experience, and I felt like the last 2 races were easier. Now Pegatron was still a big topic of discussion and still took a lot of people out, as it always does, because that one doesn't make a difference. Normally it's not over water. Even if it is, it doesn't really get wet or anything. But I felt like these 2 races were a lot easier. But maybe I'm just training more, so sometimes it's hard to tell.
Yeah, I mean, well, if stairway is not in the race, I mean that takes out because that's a lot of upper body strength to get up and down stairway, and as that's like CTG's signature obstacle. They have other ones that are really good too, but it's I don't know, it would just feel wrong. I feel like if stairway wasn't there, but
yeah,
I can't even imagine it without stairway. Like I'm trying to picture what that's like.
So if I don't think either of you were there, but they did a race in Texas. What was it, 2018 maybe, or 2017? It had to be 2017 because it was the same year as US OCR Championships in Texas, same location, and it was like CTG light, I called it, because they didn't have like all their normal obstacles. They still had stairway, but like the rig was since they built it on part of the structure of the ranch, so it was like 2 mini rigs that were only like 3 or 4 holds long, instead of like the one 6-hold rig with more challenging obstacles, more challenging holds. But yeah, that's interesting. So yeah, you mentioned Pegatron. Now I know like it's always a topic of discussion because it's super hard. What's your, how have you been able to get across that obstacle? Because I know not only does it stop females in their race, but it also stops men quite often too.
So in the past, they had the block in the middle for the women, so really never had a problem with that. And when they had the block previously, they also didn't have any rules against like wrapping your legs around the back. So it was really pretty easy for me. I mean, I would just wrap my legs around the back on the start, get my arms out a couple, pegs worth, and then I would be able to just let my legs go and stand on the block. So them removing that, really, I mean, it did what it needed to do. It made it so that you actually had to do the obstacle as it was intended. And I think I failed after they removed the block. It was right after I had my daughter in 2017. And that was the first time I ever like didn't complete all the obstacles at an OCR. And this was only my 2nd year running competitively. But yeah, without the block just makes it so much harder. But I think that it serves the purpose. Otherwise, it's just, like I said, you could just get away with not even having to do a single peg without your feet.
Yeah. So how have you been, you said you failed the first time. How did you go from failure to success so many times? Like, what did you do for your training?
So I think some, serious OCR people, what they do, and I'm one of these people. I like to build it because I want to practice it or go somewhere that has it. I want to I watched one of your videos recently, Evan, about practicing for the Z-beam, and you built the obstacle something similar to practice in the yard, and you talked about those. I don't know if you remember the 3 points that you made were. Do you remember what those 3 points were that you highlighted?
I don't.
In that video. Okay.
I just tagged my my former teammate from Toughest Mudder, Akash Garg, because he got stuck at it at this past weekend. But I only watched the beginning of the video just to make sure it was the correct one, and then I ended up watching the end. What did I say?
Okay, so that's why I watched the video, because it was like a 2016 video or something. But I saw you tagged him in it, so it showed up in my newsfeed. So I watched it because I hadn't seen that one before. But basically what I did is I built a Pegatron in the backyard. I just built a pegboard, and I have a climbing wall in the backyard. So on the brace beams of the climbing wall, I put it diagonal up because that's the way the climbing wall goes. So it's something repeatable, and I can simulate race conditions because it's the obstacle. I mean, it's a pegboard. But it's harder than the one at the race because it's angled up at like a 45-degree angle. So at the race, you're just going straight across. It's pretty easy just to kind of swing and go forward. The one in my backyard is you have to like muscle up and pull up to get up to the next peg. So training on something that's harder than what I actually experienced in the race makes race day seem so much easier because I've done it something even harder than what's out there.
Yeah, that's great technique. I approve, obviously. What about you, Jenny? How have you managed to get across Pegatron, and what's been your training techniques?
So I definitely agree with making things a little more challenging than they actually are in the race, because I think you're probably never going to really be able to like push yourself as hard as you are during a race too, and have that high heart rate and it to be as challenging. So making it harder in practice definitely benefits you in racing. There's a local ninja gym here, Apex, that has a pegboard that I've used in the past. But I haven't really been using that lately with COVID stuff and then gyms all being shut down. I have that atomic ninja board that has the little pegs on it. And even though you can't like go across it as far as you would like on Pegatron, I think like the huge thing is honestly just being able to hang from one arm. Like having that one arm hang strength helps tremendously on Pegatron. So it's just, I mean, yes, there's technique to it, and technique will make you go faster, but if you can hold on, you can complete it typically. So that's the main thing.
Yeah, also good advice. I have that ninja board too. It's in my backyard. So if anyone wants to sneak to my house, they can just start climbing on it and use it. But I haven't caught anyone doing that yet. But for that one, I basically go from end to end. So I'll go, move to the right, bring my next one, bring both pegs to the right, then move all the way to the left. The next peg all the way to the left, because there's holes all over it. But I like this, like you. I want to simulate the big movements I'm making during the race. And Miranda, you brought up a good point with the upward angle one. I think that also teaches good habits, because if I'm higher on the pegboard at Pegatron, when I mess up, I can always go down a rung. I can always go down a level. Versus if I'm at the bottom level and I'm going across the bottom set of holes, like if I mess up, I fall off, right? You don't have any playroom there. So I think that's teaching good habits.
Yeah. So something I didn't highlight either is like there was one race where I wanted to try a new technique that I had seen, but I didn't feel comfortable doing it like for an actual elite wave race. So after the event, I went and played on it for an hour just to try different techniques. So even if you don't have it in the backyard or don't have a atomic board that you can use, you can always play around on race day, assuming you have any grip left after doing the race once.
Yeah, that's a good point. Doug Snyder from the pro team also usually posts video of him doing a bunch of Spartans obstacles in like 2 moves, like Twister and some of the other stuff, which is pretty impressive. And I know a lot of like Ashley's crew, Dustin and Jason Williams there, they'll go back on, especially at Savage races, and play on the obstacles. And and try to do them in as few moves as possible and have like mini races. So it's another great option. Miranda, you mentioned that I said 3 things during the balance beam video. What were the 3 things, just out of curiosity?
I can't remember. That's what I was
Okay.
trying to get you to remember.
Oh, sorry. All right. I don't know. Yeah, I'll share it to the Strength and Speed Facebook page when this podcast posts, and then you can go watch the old balance beam video. But I'm assuming it's something about specificity.
Yes.
Doing the obstacle that it's like as close to the actual obstacle as possible. I'm assuming it's something about progressive, as in it should get harder as you get better.
Yep.
And then if I know myself, I probably said something about enjoyable. Did I use that one or no?
Yep. Those were the 3.
Oh, good. Yeah. Well, that's like my 3 basic stuff for improving obstacle proficiency or just fitness in general, right? And enjoyable, because the more you enjoy it, the more effort you'll put into it, right? Example, I don't like CrossFit, but CrossFit is a great high intensity exercise if as long as you do it safely with good form. But I just don't enjoy it, so I'm not going to put in as much effort as in me working on just obstacles or doing some endurance run training or something like that. So I think if you want to improve over the long term, you have to find something you enjoy. Otherwise, you're not going to stick with it. You're only going to do it for a little bit and then drop off. All right, now I think I know the answer to the next question, because I have 2 females who are good at Pegatron on here. But do you think the male and female obstacles should be the same? Should it be gender neutral across the board, or should there be male and female lanes? We'll start off with Miranda.
So I would say the most frustrating thing about when they don't have gender specific like lanes is, for me, I'm not very fast. I'm very obstacle proficient, which is the reason I'm able to get on the podium so often. But it really sucks when I come up to an obstacle and there's like a 10-minute wait in line to try for the first time, because there's all these guys that got there before me. So that can be a little frustrating if there's not a women's lane. So I'm not necessarily for or against like making obstacles easier for women. But I think it is helpful to either, if you're not going to stagger the elite wave for the men and women, which can still cause problems, it's nice to have a designated lane for the women. That way we're all kind of in the same boat and you're not stuck behind a bunch of guys that aren't, and especially by the time I get there, like, okay, these guys that are standing in line in front of me are in like 20th place. Like, they're not going to win money, but I could get there like in 3rd place. And if I pick the wrong lane, I could wait, 2 minutes longer than the girl next to me. So to me, that's most frustrating. So that's my opinion on that. Other than like something that might have to do with height, and it's kind of hard for me to make an example. But yeah, if there was something that could be like height based or jumping based or something. Okay, so I will say an example, like Smooth Criminal is really hard for me. I really am not good at jumping. I'm not tall, so it would be beneficial, I think, if there was a female lane for that, just because women generally are not as tall as men. So I think that you could make it further apart for the men's field and they wouldn't have a problem with it. But if you made it too far apart, the women would struggle a lot more.
That was a good answer. Not what I was expecting, but good. I like it. Yeah, definitely some good points there. And I think if you're an elite female and you're running up, like you said, to one of those rigs, I think for the most part, if you let people know that you're, top 5 or, top 7, whatever, female, I think a lot of guys will just let you go ahead for the first time. Yeah, I'm not a guarantee, but I know a lot of the guys who typically finish like in the 10th to 20th range at CTG, sometimes actually like, I've heard them like ask to clear a path for a female. So it's always an option and you can always ask. And yeah.
Sometimes that happens, and sometimes it doesn't.
Okay. I mean, you would know better because I'm usually a little bit farther ahead, but
It's very like scenario specific.
yeah.
Like I've had guys do that for me on Pegatron when there's like 10 lanes. So if there's like a bunch of guys in line in front of me and I say that I'm like, hey, I'm like top 3 female, they let me go in front. But if the example I was thinking of with waiting in line for a long time was at one of the rigs in the Oklahoma race recently, there were a ton of people waiting there. And really, all the girls got lumped up there too. So it really wouldn't even be fair for you to skip the line at that point.
Gotcha. Jenny, anything to add to that?
I would agree for the most part. My biggest thing is the height factor that Miranda kind of mentioned. I'm totally okay with honestly everything being the same except for that factor. I just, there are some things like Smooth Criminal is an issue for me because I just don't have the same length as a 6 foot man's gonna have, or any woman, I guess, or anyone that is that tall. So that's like the main thing. As far as if we're just talking like Pegatron or rigs, like I'm fine with everything being the same. I feel like grip strength and technique on those can be trained and can be learned. Again, the height thing is the one thing that I can't make myself grow anymore. So yeah. So
yeah,
that's kind of my opinion.
Good point. Yeah, I know I've seen like Doug, who's significantly taller than me, go across Smooth Criminal, and yeah, I think he can essentially step on both like the big ones, bridge the gap, and then just kind of like lean over and grab the pipe and then continue on. Versus, and I'm probably only a couple inches shorter than him, but I feel like I cannot do that. I feel like I have to make a leap. And then if you're a couple inches shorter than me, then you're definitely throwing yourself at the side pretty hard.
Yeah. How tall are you, Evan?
I'm 5'6".
Okay. Yeah. I'm 5'2". So yeah, even more.
Yeah.
It's a challenge for sure.
Miranda, how tall are you?
I'm 5'4", right in the middle of you two.
Okay. Yeah.
But Evan, I know you didn't go to the last 3 Conquer the Gauntlets, and Smooth Criminal actually, like, all of the steps were closer than previous years.
That is nice.
So I was able to straddle like all of the stepping stones, like even the first 2 big boards,
nice.
and then just take like a small leap.
So the last time I did a Smooth Criminal, I bound through on the first one when it was like mostly dry, and then on the next lap I'm coming through, and now everything's wet and I don't realize it, and I bound off the first 3 small steps, and when I went for the big one, I just like went full force into the side, and I walked away with this like huge black and blue on my thigh. And like my wife was watching, and she was like, "Oh my!" Like I hit the side, I fall over, and I'm just like laying there for a second. And she's like, "Oh, we're gonna have to go to the hospital." And I'm like, "Let me just walk it off for a second." But
I got 3 more laps to do.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about their new obstacle. So Pay the Piper. So I have not got to experience it yet. So Miranda, can you take us through Pay the Piper, what it looks like?
So if you've ever been to a children's playground, to paint a picture, it's it has a pole in the middle. A lot of the times at the playground, it'll be like a rope or something, so it'll be stationary at the top and at the bottom, but it can kind of move a little bit. Pay the Piper in the race is on a like steel beam, and then there's a disc at the bottom, and then it's just kind of like stepping stones. So you step across from disc to disc, and then there's the pole in the middle that you can grab onto. And the obstacle does go like up and then down, so you do have to take like a big step up to get onto each of the sequential stepping stones. Luckily for me, I have a daughter, so I've been practicing that obstacle for the last 2 years or so that she's been active.
Nice. Well, that's cool. I like how it's something different and not just another grip strength obstacle. So it's something a little technique based, a little bit awkward. Just something different. And I kind of like that, how Conquer the Gauntlet will stress, balance and, with multiple fairly difficult balance ones, and then grip strength, and then a little bit of heavy carry. It's just really creating a well-rounded athlete. And when they had the Crank It Up, that kind of favored the strength athlete. I know Jay Flores went from like close to first on Bryce at Tulsa one year to like way behind because the weight of Crank It Up was just real heavy. All right, let's jump into other races we've done this year. So I know Jenny's been to a couple. So I know you've been to Wicked Trail Race Kansas City, and then also KC Timber Challenge. So Jenny, take us through Wicked Trail Race Kansas City.
Yeah, so Wicked Trail Race was a fun event. It was local here in Olathe, Kansas, just outside of Kansas City. So nice and close for me. That's where I work and live. Out at a local park there, they did a 5K, a 10K, and then a 3-hour enduro option. So a couple different options for people. And I think he typically does those with some natural obstacles like ravines that you have to crawl up and creeks that you run through and things like that. But he wasn't able to do that in the location that we were at. So it was essentially just a whole bunch of hills. But it was a lot of fun. Not a huge turnout. I think that in all of the races that we've done so far this year, the turnout has just been a little bit smaller. So, but it was still a fun event and a good one to go to, I think.
Cool. Yeah, and that's what the smaller turnout is what I worry about, where brands are used to making, X amount of dollars, and now they're making half of X amount of dollars, and they're like, well, why am I doing this for essentially half of the paycheck I used to get?
Yeah.
So, that's where I worry about the future of some of these races. So, I think if there's a race on the calendar and they're saying they're putting it on, then I feel confident, paying and signing up for it. But, if we want races to be around in another year, I think it's important that not only you go, but you grab as many of your friends as you can.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've actually even just signed up for some that I'm not even sure if I'm going to be able to do, just to try to support some races. So, yeah.
So speaking of supporting races, one of the ones I've gotten to do multiple times this year, I've actually done all of the ones they've offered, is KC Timber Challenge. And I know you've been to, I think, 3 out of the 4 this year. So what did you think of the final event of the year, Extreme Timber Challenge, which was an OCR World Championships qualifier and their first OCR World Championships qualifier? What'd you think about that?
Yeah. It was great. They always do a great job. Their trails themselves are a lot of fun. The obstacles improve every year, and they do a great job of marking everything and just keeping everybody aware of what's going on. The volunteers do a pretty good job of monitoring everything. So as far as like the elite heat goes, it was a lot of fun. Again, smaller turnout than usual, but like we just talked about, that's kind of the norm right now. But it was still a decent race, I think, and everyone had a ton of fun. So
yeah,
good.
Yeah, I've done their course 4 times this year, and you'd think I'd be burnt out by it, but I'm actually, the more times I do it, I feel like the more it feels like home, and the more I get excited to go back, because it's like my home race. And it's been fun. And even with the 4 races they've done this year, they all had such different feelings. I was legitimately very surprised, right? So they do the winter one, the Yeti, which is in snow. It was the end of OCR America for me, so that was awesome. Then they did the Wild Women's Timber Challenge, right? The all-female one.
Yep.
Which we talked about on the podcast before, I believe. They did the Family Timber Challenge, so it was a 2-mile version of their event, but they still had a lot of the good obstacles, and I took my 5-year-old daughter on. And then the Extreme Timber Challenge is basically all the trails, all the obstacles. So, yeah, it's a great venue and great obstacles, and like I said, the more times I go back, the more I'm enjoying it. So I highly encourage.
Is that the one with the zip line?
Yeah, it's the one with the zip line.
Yeah.
You got to come up for it.
That's what stands out to me. I know. I'm like, I want to do an OCR with a zip line.
Yeah, it's so fun.
And it works out really well because it's late enough in the race where I don't know about when you get there, Jenny, but when I get there, there's no line.
No, yeah.
So yeah, it works out. And you got to come up, Miranda, because we got two. I'm offering Jenny's place up to stay, but you have two places you can stay here.
Yeah, you do.
Just gonna offer it up for you. But I have a guest room also. Anyway, Miranda, you got to go to one of the Savage races post quarantine. So what was that like?
So it felt pretty normal, other than the same point that you guys have hit on with just less people being there. Other than that, it really didn't feel that different. They did have like mandatory masks in the festival area, like if you couldn't social distance, but I hardly saw anybody like actually wearing one. So I think people were wearing them on the way in, and then it seems like as soon as they went into the festival area and were hanging out with their friends, they were just like pulling them down. So honestly, that was a little, I mean, I'm not really, I don't know, I feel conflicted about that whole thing, so I'm not really going to talk about it. But other than that, I mean, it felt pretty normal. The race, I mean, they had just, I guess they were missing like Davy Jones. I think they had all their other like normal obstacles that they would, so it didn't feel like a quarantine race.
Gotcha. Cool. Now, maybe this is not the best question for the two of you because you've actually gotten to race a couple times this year, each of you. So how have you been dealing with 2020 in general? Just like a lot of the unknowns where we don't know if this race is going or not. Maybe there's a period, especially March, April, May, where like pretty much everything was canceled. Let's start off with Jenny. Like, how have you been mentally or emotionally dealing with that in your training?
As far as training goes, I think that I'm running a lot more than I used to. That's just kind of been my way to stay sane. So just putting in a lot more miles and getting out on trails a lot more than I used to. I think before is just always time-wise just easier to jump on the road, and now I'm actually like driving out and finding new trails to explore and spend some time on. So that's been fun. And then as far as like you mentioned, I've done some races, but I will say that I've kind of struggled over the last 2 months or so, and that I want to do everything because nothing has been available. And it's been a challenge to not just sign up and want to race everything that is possible. So just trying to hold back a little bit from that, but getting some races in that I can anyway.
Gotcha. Miranda, what about you?
I haven't had as much of the same reluctant feeling to sign up for races. So I think by the time October is over, I will have done like 7 races or like 5 races out of 7 weekends or something. So it's pretty hectic. I will say during quarantine, I had the same thing. Like I just started running more. So it was kind of nice because normally I really don't like to run in the cold or really in the hot. So I don't run very much in the winter or the summer. But unfortunately, that means that like most of my running happens in the spring, the fall, which is race season. So the problem with that is this happening like 5 races out of 7 weekends isn't uncommon for the spring and fall. So it makes it really hard to actually train because like today my legs are super sore from running Continuum on Saturday. My legs will still be sore tomorrow. I have another race weekend this Saturday, so I might be able to run on Wednesday and then maybe do like something super light on Thursday and then nothing on Friday because it'll be pre-race day. So that's kind of the struggle that I get in during like actual race season is I'm like constantly just in recovery mode or taper. I mean, there's like no in between, like I said, I get Wednesday to do like a full run, but that's not even like a fast pace anything. Yeah. Like it's just going to be a 6-mile slow, easy. So
yeah. So essentially you need to build your fitness in the off season and then just with the amount you're racing, basically just coast it try to ride that wave as long as you can.
Yeah, so that was actually nice about this year. Like, not having the races in the spring gave me the time to build up that, like, running mileage that I needed.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, the some of the races getting canceled was frustrating. For me, what's frustrating now is my work has a bunch of additional restrictions. So just because there are races, like I couldn't go to Dallas this weekend because work was like, you can't go to Dallas. That's too far away. Like you'll get COVID immediately. And I'm like, of course I will. So that's been very frustrating, especially, when there was no races going on, obviously it didn't bother me. So I was like, all right, well, there's no races. But now that there are races occurring again in the Midwest, I find it very frustrating. But I think, in general, people are like, oh, 2020 sucks. And for OCR, 2020 does suck because a lot of the races do get canceled. But, I think you just focus on something else. So, been working on some other projects around the house and spend time with my family and stuff like that. So I don't think 2020 sucks. I think it sucks for OCR, but if you think it sucks, maybe you just have a bad attitude. That's generally my opinion on things. So
Conquer the Gauntlet is my main race source anyways, so I don't feel like I lost out on like that many races.
That's a good point. That is a very good point.
And sometimes I do Savage Race Maryland, but those have 2 events there, but both of those conflicted with Conquer the Gauntlet this year, so I wasn't going to do those anyways.
Gotcha. So speaking of, you, like we mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, your new addition to the Conquer the Gauntlet Pro team. So what did, I think other people that may want to go that route, whether it be Conquer the Gauntlet or Spartan, or maybe they have a local brand that has a pro team, or their gym might have a pro team or something similar, right? Like some organizational team that they want to get a part of. What did you do to get on the team, or like draw attention to yourself, I guess would be the term. So I'll just kind of let you take it for a minute, Miranda.
So I think there's a couple pieces to it. I think one is like socializing with the team members. I think you have to have good rapport and like be a good person, which maybe that's kind of an obvious thing, but like if you're talking trash at races all the time or something, or to people, or just complaining, like nobody's going to want you on their team if you're not a nice person to be around. But if you have that problem, I don't know. There's nothing.
There's a personality problem. You'll have to deal with that.
Yeah.
All right.
I probably shouldn't have brought that up. But socializing with the team members, I mean, I think you want to get good rapport with the team that you're interested in joining. So I became friends with people on the team because I've been interested in the pro team for a long time. And so yeah, that was like step one for me, is like get on the inside, be friends with the people that are like voting people into the team. Obviously the next important piece is like doing well. So you have to improve if you're not already doing well, and find ways to do that. So for me, I'm really not a great runner. So previous years, I focused on the obstacles, and just by being able to complete all the obstacles, that was able to get me in that top 3 a couple times. But in order to continue to do that as the sport grows, I have to get faster. I mean, the people that I'm competing against, it's common nature. I mean, if people are going to start training harder to do better, everybody wants to be in those top spots. So that was nice. Like I said about quarantine this year, I was able to focus more on my running. So I was kind of grateful to have that time to spend to focus on. I like reset all new PRs this year for everything, like 5K, 10K, half marathon, like all of my PRs were made this year, like of all time. So that was something I really focused on this year, was getting faster. And then work on your weaknesses. So previously something I had trouble with was the transition from obstacles to running. I would take, 10 to 40 seconds walking up to an obstacle, like taking my time, catching my breath. And The top elites don't do that. They jump on the obstacle, they jump off, they keep going. So that was something I also have really focused on over the last year to get better at, to help with my placement. So socialize with the team, you know, and know what you want. I mean, if you pick a team and that's who you want to be a part of, I would say, like, stay focused.
Yeah.
This was always like my end goal, to be on Conquer the Gauntlet Pro team. So don't let other teams that you're not, and maybe it's, I don't know. I mean, I did do that. I joined Team Valhalla for a little while, but I knew that, like, in the end, I did want to become a part of Conquer the Gauntlet. So I knew that was just kind of a stepping stone. So just, like, keep your eyes open for the opportunities that you're looking for.
Yeah. No, absolutely good advice. And I know, like, when Jay Flores wanted to get on the team, he's like, all right, I'm going to every Conquer the Gauntlet this year. And it was like, that's a pretty good plan, because he ended up getting on the podium at, like, I mean, I don't think he got on every one, but he almost got on every podium. And then, like, at the end of the year, it was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure Jay should be on the team, because he's literally on every podium. So, yeah, very good. All that is great advice. And, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with, I think some people might think that it sounds negative to say, you know, using one team as a stepping stone, but I think that's normal. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, right? Like, if someone from the Conquer the Gauntlet team started racing Spartan and doing really well there, and Spartan offered them a better contract, I wouldn't be like, oh, you traitor. I'd be like, yeah, better contract. Like, good. Like, that's good for you as an athlete, you know? I try to, you know, with this podcast and with Strength and Speed and Conquer the Gauntlet, I try to help empower athletes, and which is one of the reasons we typically don't. I've broken the rule a couple times, so but I try not to bring race directors on the podcast too often. I try to focus on the athletes that are helping represent the brand. So I'm trying to empower the athlete, so the race director puts more trust in them, so they increase their value. Again, which is one of the reasons I try to do athletes that represent brands versus the brands themselves. Plus, you get the athlete perspective versus getting the whatever the brand's pitch is going out. So, all right, let's start wrapping it up again, because it's late and I'm supposed to be in bed right now. So, before we go, we're going to do our usual question. Tell us one thing people would be surprised to know about you. I know Jenny's excited because she used her cheerleading one already, so she's got to come up with something else good.
That's my best one.
That's a really good one. It's not as good as when we had Kelly Williams on, and she told me she used to be a character at Disney World. That's been my favorite
cool
one.
too. Yeah.
I was really excited about that. All right, who wants to go first? Silence.
I'll go.
All right.
So when I was younger, I had trouble committing to sports, so I tried a lot of different sports out there. So one thing that I did was I took figure skating lessons.
Oh, interesting. Can you skate still, or like, are you good, or is it like?
Yeah, I
should
should clarify. Yeah, so I did take lessons, but I could never, like, you know, do the jumps or anything. So I can figure skate still. I'm a good figure skater. Or I should say, like, decent. Like, I don't want to get your hopes too high up there. Like, I can skate backwards, but yeah, I can't, like, do a jump or anything fancy nowadays.
But I mean, if we went to the skating ring, people would be like, "Oh, she knows what she's doing."
Yeah, I would probably not fall down.
So, well, I'm gonna dovetail off that for a second. I had one of my college roommates. I don't know if he took figure skating, but like he knew how to do like basic figure skating moves. And like in freshman year of college, it was like me and one of my other friends who used to play hockey went to the skating rink, and like, you know, my friend who plays hockey is like skating around aggressively like a hockey player would, and my other friend's skating around like a figure skater, and it was like, dude, what is going on right now? I'm like stumbling around the ice, but yeah, it was pretty funny seeing so it's a lot funnier seeing a male figure skate who's you know, not part of that world. But anyway,
yeah.
Jenny, what do you got?
All right, I just thought of one. You guys might know this, Miranda, you probably don't, but I have actually really severe hearing loss. So like I wear hearing aids. I take them out when I race, obviously, because hearing aids are expensive and I don't want to ruin them. But yeah, I'm like partially deaf. So
No way.
sometimes like
How did I
if
never
we're at a
notice
race,
this? How
you've
have I
never noticed.
I, I got never
If
noticed.
I see you out, if I see you like outside of racing, or if we're like not doing a workout or something, I probably have my hearing aids in, so you probably wouldn't even notice. But when I take them out when I'm getting ready to race, like I can't really hear anything, and it makes some races a little bit more challenging than others when I don't know what I'm supposed to do, and and volunteers are trying to tell me, and I'm like, you have to yell louder, because yeah. So
Oh,
it's kind
interesting.
of interesting. Yeah.
Is it in both
Yeah, I
ears or
didn't know
just
that.
one?
Yeah, it's both ears. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. So anyone out there, if you ever say something to me and I don't respond, it's not because I'm not nice. I did not hear you. So,
interesting. So I
yeah.
think I did. I really should start keeping a list of things I've said on the podcast. I'm losing hearing in my left ear. I think it's from shooting guns.
Yeah.
And getting blown up once or twice. I think that's what it's from.
That happens. Yeah.
They were like, oh, I think it's something, having to do with the thickness of the bone in your ear. And I was like, what? Why is it only in one ear? And they're like, oh, well, you haven't shot guns recently, so it's probably not that. I'm like pretty sure it's from shooting guns.
Yeah.
So I can feel it now that they pointed it out. It drives me crazy because now I notice it versus the last like 2 years I haven't noticed it at all until the doctor pointed it out. So,
Yeah.
that's my connection. I don't really have anything else good.
You're
All
not
right.
going to include a fun fact. You do a podcast too often.
I do. So like I said, I get into on previous podcasts. I get into kicks where like I'll find a subject that I find interesting and like dive deep into it until I literally hit the bottom.
Like Bigfoot?
Like Bigfoot, right? Or gladiators. So my recent obsession has been because Halloween was coming up. I started going into Hellraiser, the Hellraiser universe, right? So they 4 theatrical releases, and there's another 6 movies that went straight to video. The majority of them are terrible. Big surprise. So I watched over the last couple of weeks. I've watched all 10 movies. I've read essentially every Hellraiser comic that you can find on Amazon. They have Comixology where you can do digital comics. It's really good. And then I had a bunch of when I was a kid that I had my dad send me over. And then I re-listened to The Hellbound Heart, which is what the Hellraiser book is based on. Or I'm sorry, the movie's based on. It's based on a book. And then Scarlet Gospels, which is the sequel. And the cool part about, well, I think it's cool. The cool part about the sequel, the Scarlet Gospels, it's heavily based on Christianity, which was very surprising because obviously Hellraiser is the opposite side of the spectrum, right? But they use a lot of theological things from Christianity about, Lucifer being an angel who's fallen, and the reason he's so angry all the time is essentially because he's separated from God's love. So the book Scarlet Gospels, I really wish they would turn into a movie because it was really, really good. And then the comic book, the Hellraiser Omnibus, it's just like a collection of all their comics, was really good also. Like it's way, way better than the movies. Like the movies don't even come close to how good the book is and how good the comic series is. Because essentially Pinhead is, one, it's not pins, it's nails in his head, but it's a crown. It's not, it's not like the Pinhead is not unique to a person. It's essentially the Hell Priest. That's who has all the nails stuck in his head. So it actually changes characters several times in the book. So that's my recent kick. If anyone likes horror movies, I have like the Hellraiser box, the actual like box that opens the gates, right? It moves around and stuff. So random stuff. Yeah.
Interesting.
Any horror fans? No, Miranda, Jenny, you don't seem like horror fans.
No, not even a little bit. Sorry.
Not even a little bit.
I do kind of like horror movies. I definitely did more so when I was younger. But I don't really like older movies. So Hellraiser would probably be one I wouldn't really be that interested in watching.
I only do 90s horror. like 80s, 90s horror, maybe early 2000s. But like if they started the series after 2005, I've got literally no interest, not even remotely interested. So all the modern stuff, I don't know.
Yeah, they are. It's
anything.
different.
Anything
What's
remotely scary, I can't do it. So.
what's cool about Hellraiser is they still use real effects, so they don't use computer generated. So that it's like all makeup, and I mean it's hyper violent, right? Like, I mean the movies are not good Christian movies at all. It's just full of sex and people getting literally ripped apart by chains. Especially the last one, the 10th one, straight to video, and the 9th one were really, really violent. But yeah, interesting. All right. That about wraps it up. Before we go, any final shout outs you want to give? We'll start off with Jenny. Friends, family, sponsors, etc.
All of our pro team sponsors, they're all amazing and keep supporting us, even though we're not able to race like we normally would be. So every one of them.
All right. Miranda, what do you got?
So as a new member to the CTG Pro team, I'm kind of waiting for sponsors to provide things. But I did want to call out Rock Tape specifically because they, provided the team with additional gear this year. So there were things that I was able to jump in on. So the rock sauce stuff has been great for my sore muscles over the last couple of days since the Continuum race. So yeah, I've been super, super grateful to have those.
Awesome. And we have Blegmit's Lights and Extreme in the Team Strength Speed store. So if anyone needs those, you can head over and pick those up. We're not ordering any more before 2021. So once the current stock is gone, that's it. So if you're looking to get them for Toughest Mudder or Virtual World's Toughest or just cold winter running, I know I saw Jenny post a pic. What was it, yesterday or today or something, running in the Blegmit Lights.
Oh yeah, I love those things. Those are a cold weather necessity for me. So
yeah. So we have those in the store. Also, my books are in the store. Conquer the Gauntlet Pro Team Workouts to Go is available now on Amazon. And I know the last podcast recording, I did a Q&A one. William Shell posted a whole bunch of more good questions. I'm going to get to that again probably in another 2 episodes because I figured people don't want to hear me just run my mouth by myself for multiple episodes in a row. So we'll get to that. We are going to get to those because, again, I think they're really good. But, yeah, I think that about wraps it up. Other than that, check Mud Run Guide. I'm still writing articles for them on a weekly basis. So I know I just posted a couple of High Elite reviews, a couple of their different pairs of shorts, and then Squirrel's Nut Butter review and Rock Sauce review is coming up soon. And then I've also got one about Jay Flores has a YouTube video / Instagram live series called Changing the Game. So you definitely want to check that out. He takes science, technology, engineering, math, so STEM-related topics, and he dives deep into them in the world of fitness where they have crossover points, right? So he did one for Rapid Reboot, since those compression pants. He did one, or he's going to do one for UFOs. He did one with Michelle Warnke where they're talking about designing obstacles and kind of, that one's really good because they talk about like the next level of where, they could see Ninja Warrior going with like, more mechanical based obstacles or obstacles that kind of reset themselves without human assistance. Because right now, whenever they do an obstacle, a human has to come in and reset it before each run, which could speed up the number of athletes they get through. And on a smaller scale, it would allow for, a much faster runs for people where if the obstacles just automatically reset themselves. So kind of some cool concepts in there. And then on top of that, another article publishing about Amy Padgett. So if you don't know, Amy Padgett actually has written several children's books. So it is Dogs Go to Montana and Dogs Retire to Montana and Cats Retire to Arizona. So Amy Padgett is a vet, and she wrote a children's book for what happens when your dog passes. So, and then one for cats also. And then if you don't have children or don't have nieces or nephews you want to buy them for, she also has another book that is not a children's book. It's called Cats Go to Hell. So I think some people may like that. And all 3 of her books are available off the CTG Pro Team website. So if you go to ctgproteam.com and head over to the store, you can pick up the books there, and Amy will sign them for you. She writes under a pen name, so I think it's Dr. Jones? And when I say that, I think Indiana Jones. I'm pretty sure it's Dr. Jones. But yeah, so you can check that out and read the article when it comes out. All right, that's it. Let's stop talking so we can all go to bed separately, different houses. I know.
Sounds good.
Imply we're not that close as a team. All right. We'll catch all of you later.
All right.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, Evan.